Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. It's great to be here again for another session in the A4Q Congress. I'm delighted to have with me Erik van Veenendaal from the TMMi Foundation. And Erik is going to talk a little bit about the test maturity model integration, the scheme, and the benefit and value. I'm not going to take up any of Erik's time, but pass over to him to give more of an introduction and to head straight into his presentation. Thank you so much, Erik.
Thank you, Debbie, for introduction. Welcome all of you from wherever you are and where in the world. We have an hour, which is not much, but I will present the TMMi model to you. Basically, three things I want to do. First of all, make sure we're on the same wavelength. So a few words about the TMMi Foundation, the background, and where we are today. And then, which is, I think, the major part of my presentation, I want to discuss with you the worldwide survey that we did recently, user survey, and some of the results. It's not all of it there. There will be a report issued shortly. I will come back to that, but user survey. And the final stage of my presentation is going to be about, suppose you're interested, you want to know more, how can you get involved in TMMi as a professional, as a company, or even as a country or region. Okay. This is who I am, Erik van Veenendaal. As Debbie already said, I'm currently the CEO of the TMMi Foundation. There's a website mentioned, so I would say nothing more about me. Let's go and get ready for the real meat. First of all, when we talk about test improvement, I always say there are three dimensions to consider. And of course, we'll talk about in this presentation about the test process, but it's good to say test improvement needs a number of, I would say, directions or components. It helps to have good people. So things like ISTQB, which you're probably familiar with, having good trained testers or having developers being trained in testing is something that is needed to get the right results. And of course, we all know a tester today is different tester than a number of years ago. And today we're talking about a T-shaped tester where we're expecting a tester to have development skills, business analysis skills, understand the domain he's working in, and many more things. We'll also talk about a second thing, which is important when we talk about improvements today, is we talk about automation. Tooling. Without tooling today, I think we're getting highly ineffective. And in fact, I think without tooling, it's almost impossible to do a good job. So a second direction when we talk about improving testing is about doing this one. So basically we have people issues, but of course, just doing people without addressing the other ones leads to what we call a hero culture. If you only focus on automation, it may be very efficient, but maybe you're not testing the right things. So there's a third dimension, which is called test process. And I think the three together, balanced in a certain way, and the balance depends on the context, can make, I would say, the things happen. If you talk about test process or process in general, I think in the past, people did it often the right way, but it's like a corporate memory. It's like when you have new engineers coming, you can be trained, we have something in place. And finally, I think only something which is being documented, we can actually improve. So as a context, we have people, we have automation, and we have process. But of course, my talk will be about the process side. I'm just going to say here that TMMi doesn't stand by itself, it has a context. The foundation, TMMi Foundation, established quite a number of years ago already, in 2005, with two main objectives. One objective was to develop the full TMMi model, a model for test process improvement, hopefully become a sort of standard model around the world. Secondly, Also important with the TMMi Foundation is to establish a framework for TMMi assessments. We would very much like organizations throughout the world to assess where they are compared to the model, and that these assessments are done in the same format, whether done in China, in the UK, or the US, or in Peru. So that means when you say you are level X, you will have the same outcome consistently around the world. Both have now been put in place for a while already. The model was published in full. I'll come back to the model in a minute. In 2010. For those who are not familiar with the model, it's built on a number of, I would say, established practices. It doesn't make sense if you develop a test model to start from scratch. Of course, we looked at ISTQB. ISTQB has in their syllabi many great practices. There are IEEE standards. There is TMMi, a model for software post improvement. There are all kinds of best practice surveys. There are ISO standards around. So all of these inputs have been used to develop the TMMi model. One big advantage is that if we talk about the TMMi model, you would see it speaks the same language as ISTQB already. And with ISTQB having about 1 million people being certified, that's, I would say, an advantage. The other advantage is that people who are familiar from a TMMi background will immediately understand the structure of TMMi. And today, the model is available in English, of course, but also translated into Chinese, into French, into Spanish, and very recently also in Portuguese. So quite a few derivatives already available on the TMMi model. It's important to understand it's an independent model, and independent means it's independent of any test method. It's not TMAP related or anything like that. It's independent. Whatever you want to use, it's okay. It's also intended to be independent of the life cycle. So whether you have an agile or doing sequential V model or DevOps, TMMi should work. We'll come back to that later on. And finally, we have now achieved, I think, that TMMi is today the world's leading model for test post improvement. There was a very big study by IEEE software, where they looked at many instances of companies doing test process improvement, and by far number one was TMMi. So we could say we are the world's leading model today for test process improvement. Interesting, by the way, to see that also on the A4Q conference from this week, there are 4 talks about TMMi, which I think also means something. I think there's one in Russian, one in French, one in Spanish, if I'm correct, and this one is in English, of course. The model. This is the picture of the model, as you can see. 5 levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, with in each level a number of process areas, you call them, or practice areas if you want. It's a model which goes from, I would say, getting better at finding defects, so you might say detection, to at the end, level 5, a model which is more concerned by preventing defects. So you might say it's from detection to prevention. Interesting with this model, the stage model, you can measure where you are, and it will help you to say what are the natural next steps in improving. So it gives you priorities. If you are still level 1, probably is good to look at level 2 things as a main focus. Maybe a little bit ahead of level 3, but forget about level 4 and 5. You are not ready for that. So it's a guide if you want, what should you do next? For your information, people ask that a lot, and getting from 1 to 2, depending on where you start, but I think it's possible in around 9 months, and more things happen in 9 months, as you know, but in 9 months, you can typically, on average, achieve level 2. Thereafter, the step from 2 to 3 is typically smaller, but about 6 months, it takes from 2 to 3. So this is the model on a very high level. Interesting enough, from my personal experience, if you look at where is the world, and every time that I do an assessment, whether it's in the Caribbean, whether it's in UK, whether it's in the Netherlands, whether it's almost every time a company is starting at level 1. We think that at around 60% of the companies is still a level 1 company. That also means if someone is doing TMMi and achieves level 2, he is much better than average in the market. So even level 2 is, I think, an achievement. A little bit more about the model. So let's blow up level 2 if you want. Level 2 is called managed. And as you can see here, there are 5 process areas. There's policy and strategy, test planning, monitoring control, design execution, and environment. I always say level 2 is, to me, the project-oriented. It's learning how to survive in a project. There is no luxury level 2. It's very much a project-oriented level. You need to start understanding test planning. And test planning is not about writing a 40-page IEEE 829 conformant test plan. Test planning, in TMMi terminology, is about upfront thinking. In every process area in TMMi, there are so-called goals. So in test planning, it's good to say, are we able to prioritize? Doing risk analysis. Are we able to estimate test planning? Are we able to define an approach for testing? Are we able to document that? And this could be on a task board, could be on a small test plan. And are we able to review that and have commitment? So every process area has goals, has practices in there. But this is, as I said, very much basic. Test planning, monitoring control, test design execution, making sure you have the right test cases, using techniques like exploratory testing or boundary value analysis, or whatever you want to use. Defect management, of course, in an environment that looks as much as possible real life. So this is doing the basic stuff you need to do in any project. There is one addition, which is the one on top: test policy and strategy. And to me, the main thing is that having a test policy is also talking to your management, getting management commitment, but also understanding, is there an issue? Why are we doing this? I was involved in many process improvement projects, and sometimes you are asked in after a while, and my first question always is, why are we doing this? Is there a business problem? If you don't know what you're aiming at, what the objective is, what management wants to achieve, you will probably fail in the project. So it's good to have a test policy in the first place, say, why are we doing this? As an example, on this slide here, a company I was involved in, the policy was lead time reduction. That was the most important thing. Product quality was okay, but we have to be more efficient. And if you know this, then of course, when you start doing test design execution, you look for how can you make it more efficient instead of how can you take the most effective techniques and find more defects. So level 2, management, basic project-oriented levels, and there are more levels to talk about, but of course, let's look at other things in that context. Something about trends. What we are seeing, as I said already, is today TMMi is not only by us, but confirmed to be the leading model. And we're seeing, even in this difficult COVID times, that we can actually have growth rates. We are seeing here number of TMMi professionals certified. And in 2020, we actually have a small minus of -2%. But I think if you are familiar with certification programs of people, you probably know that -2% is a great achievement. And that means that we expect this year, hopefully with less COVID, that will grow again. But more important for us is not certified TMMi professionals. Of course, we want to train people and want to make sure people understand TMMi, but the main goal is to get organizations on a higher level. Some want to be certified and some just want to use TMMi, which is fine. Interesting for me, much more interesting this one. It shows how many organizations are being certified on a yearly basis. And here we see in 2020 a growth rate of 40%. 40% in a period, in a time where Corona or COVID is very dominant. So we are expecting a further growth rate, of course, in 2021. We have momentum in that sense. As I said already, the fact there are 4 speakers at this conference, I recognized or I saw that there are about 4 or 5 webinars being held in the last few months, one in India, one in Hungary. There was one, I think, in the US. Things are happening, okay? That's TMMi. As I said already, the main part, or the body, you might say, of my talk is about the worldwide user survey. And I already read on the internet, people were actually looking for this. First of all, some background about the survey. It's a user survey. That's important to understand. It's not just random asking people what you think about. No, we went to the actual users. So we went to the organizations that are actually using TMMi to improve their processes. So it's a user survey. Okay, that's important to understand. It's not asking, I don't know, assessor or asking a training provider, or no, it's a user survey, an end user survey, you might say. Those who are using the model. We have in the TMMi Foundation a university team. So the survey was designed together with them, which I think typically helps to get a better foundation, to get a better questionnaire, to think about things slightly more in detail. For us, as foundation, we want to understand the benefits. Are there benefits? What are the benefits? Excuse me. Are there challenges? What are the challenges? What does the market need? Where are we? What do people like? What is difficult? So it's the first time we actually went out in this way. And we invited, asked all the assessed organizations, and that is from the beginning until today or yesterday, to actually contribute. So those who were formally assessed and got certified, those that were informally assessed, anything we had, we asked them. And we asked the question, or we sent a survey to the project sponsors. So especially to management. So anything, a broad audience. Very interesting. I think this just shows a sort of commitment from our users. We've got a very high return rate of 64%. I must say, sometimes you need to remind them twice or 3 times, but in the end, we had 64% return rate. And I've learned from our university people that with a return rate and population size and things like that, you calculate a confidence level. And we achieved in this survey a confidence level of 85%. And this is important to understand based on what I'm going to show you in the next slides. It means that the real value is probably within plus or minus 5% of the measured value. So the things I'm going to say are probably, you might say, somewhat true. In addition, I also looked at how many years have the people who actually filled out the survey been using TMMi. On average, approximately 4 years. So you might say they really understand TMMi and their opinion is indeed important and has value. First of all, and I'll come back later on the survey, how to get more results and how to get the full report. But the first question is, where is TMMi currently happening? And I would say that if you look at the world map, it is very dominant in Asia. So countries like Malaysia, the Philippines, South Korea, China are all very active with TMMi. Secondly, we see a huge bar, or a big bar, you might say, on Europe. So there are quite a few European countries where TMMi is popular, the UK being one of them, and some other countries are actually growing, you might say, their awareness on TMMi. France is another company where TMMi is doing quite well. The Americas, North America especially, is not that big yet, and we are seeing a little bit of attention in Africa and Middle East. I must say it's especially Middle East, and looking at numbers, recent numbers of training in Middle East, I would expect that countries like Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Jordan may well represent a higher number here. So this is, where is TMMi happening? Another question, and this for me was a very important question, is which industries is TMMi most interesting for? And we are seeing that 37% of our end users, are actually from the finance industry. So banking is very big. Bank of England, Bank of China, two examples, but also insurance companies. Basically, the finance companies make up currently 37% of our users. So if you are involved in this, or you're selling TMMi in your country, or you are a bank, probably have a look. Of course, in banking, in finance, I think compliance is a biggest thing. So it makes sense for them, of course, to be involved. And I think in banking today, IT is a, how do you say that in English, competitive edge. The second large group, which we'll see, is IT companies. And with the IT companies, we also think about companies that offer testing services or QA services. I don't know, because we didn't ask the question why, but I think also in these kind of companies, of course, you want to produce quality, but there's also a commercial aspect. Because if you're offering testing services and you can say, actually, I'm a level 3 TMMi company, it's a strong statement. So we're seeing a lot of companies here on the IT 30%. There's a third group, but that's a group with a larger variety, and that's countries for more the safety critical industry. You can think about healthcare, companies like automotive, and these kind of companies. So we're learning here on this first slide is where is it happening and which domains are especially interesting or are interested in TMMi. Another thing which I was interested in, I just took some highlight from the overall survey, is those who are doing TMMi, are they using Agile, are they using DevOps, or are they only using sequential? Or so I was a bit surprised, to be honest, but 78% of our end users, of the companies that are doing TMMi are also doing Agile. Not on all of their projects, but on at least part of their projects. That's a big group. The same with DevOps. A bit less, but still a pretty high percentage. 57% of our users is also applying DevOps. I always thought this is also an interesting statement. Almost 70% of our users, of the TMMi users, actually apply multiple lifecycle models. So depending on the product, depending on the project, they actually take the one that is most suitable. And many still use sequential models, which is fine, if that's the best one to use for this project. So it's often what we're seeing is a mix of life cycles. It's not like a bank says, I'm only doing Agile. No, for these projects, yes, but some other projects which are well established, maybe the V model is still okay. So it's a mix we're seeing. But we're still at least seeing that saying, like some saying, is that TMMi doesn't fit with Agile or TMMi doesn't fit with DevOps, seems to not make much sense. So this is the life cycle that people are using. Looking at satisfaction, and we'll come back to satisfaction also on the next slide, and benefits. We asked about satisfaction ratio in general, and you can see clearly that our users are on average pretty satisfied with what they are achieving. Yeah. Extremely satisfied, 70%, very satisfied, 37%, and satisfied about 36%. But of course, there are always people who say, hey, we're not satisfied, which could be due to the model, didn't work for them, or could be due to other reasons, but at least they didn't achieve what they were trying to achieve. This is, by the way, also the average maturity level, or the maturity level percentages for those who are doing TMMi. A big lump, or a huge group, you might say, is at level 3. There is a group at level 2. Some are just starting up, level 1, struggling, you might say, to get to level 2. And there are also quite some companies that achieved level 4, level 5. This actually is the same. This is from the survey. If you look at our website and other things, we are seeing the same distribution. So it seems that's what we're aiming at. Maturity level and satisfaction. Of course, satisfaction is one thing. You could ask someone, are you satisfied? Which you see in many surveys. But I'm a tester. I would like to make more tangible. So why are you satisfied? What are you achieving? Why should you be doing TMMi? I can't go to a bank and say, well, someone is satisfied, so you should do this as well. So we also looked at what are tangible benefits that you got from doing TMMi. What we are seeing, what we have measured, is that 88% of the TMMi users, and beware, their average experience is 4 years. So that doesn't mean I will get TMMi and in 3 months I have all the benefits. You have to work for the benefits. You have to invest to get the benefits. But it's possible to get them. So we're seeing that from our user survey, 88% is claiming to have benefits in the area of product quality. And of course, product quality means something different for many companies. As some claim, we have more product quality, more reliability, more usability. Others say we have reduced our level of product risks. Others say we have less defects in the field. Depends on your goals, on how you measure these things. So product quality is certainly a benefit of TMMi. Another one is efficiency. Again, a high ratio. Increased productivity. We can accelerate software delivery. Reduce project costs. Again, it depends on the company how they're measuring things, but it's certainly not that by doing TMMi, we are looking at building a huge process, and as a result, we get less efficient. For me, in this, I would say, agile world or lean world, I like the word lean as well, the trick is how to build a process that is as lean as possible and as efficient as possible. So apparently, many of our users are in fact doing that. So test efficiency also. As more or less expected, you might say, at least for me, is compliance. 84% said, hey, we have achieved TMMi certification. Or, also for many, important, we've achieved a compliance to a standard. In our market, that's very, very important. Think back about the finance industry. It's important to say we are doing testing and we're using this as a model, as a reference. And although in the beginning I said people is a different angle than process, of course there are people aspects in TMMi. And a high number has claimed that they're also achieving benefits in terms of people. What I've seen myself is that if you are starting doing TMMi and testing becomes more respected, testers become more respected. then the team morale, if you want, is improving. And because we have training requirements in TMMi, if you're doing stuff, if you have a process, you should train them on test techniques, on risk-based testing, on estimation. So the same is here. We are seeing, as a result of TMMi, also an improved test engineering discipline. So also in terms of people, you see benefits, which typically result in people staying longer to a company, or less people being sick leave or higher productivity rates. So we are seeing very concrete benefits being measured through our survey that can be achieved. As I said before, it's not something you do in a few months. It requires dedication. We also ask people to quantify their benefits, and I've put together not really random, but some benefits that people reported. There are many more, by the way. There'll be more in the report as well. But just to give you a flavor of what people are saying. And we see here the type of company. This is healthcare, a retail company, automotive, IT company, banking, insurance, professional services. And you see here also the level 3, 4, and 5. So some companies that achieve level 3 are stating our test predictability has increased by 70%. So they are much better able to estimate and to be. A retail company, big retail company, came back saying, hey, because we actually aligned processes across the organizations, the number of tools went down from 10 to 6, and as a result, more efficient, but also less costs being spent on tooling, alignment across projects, across products. Automotive. I'm not saying it's this car, by the way, but higher product risk coverage. A IT company, DDP, and DDP stands for defect detection percentage. So how many defects are you finding compared to the number of defects found in the next stage of testing or operation? They achieved an increase from 60 to 70% system testing. So they got better, more product quality if you want. Down here, level 4, time to market reduction, 7%. DDP system level improved by 22%. Development cycle reduced from 3 months to 1 month, a bank. Reduced cost of external testers, also an interesting one. You train your own people, they get better. As a result, you're less dependent on external testers or external consultants. It may be relevant to some companies. And finally, some level 5 companies, and as I said, these are just examples, but it's interesting to read real meat and real examples, is an insurance company. Again, DDP, defect detection percentage, production improved by 30%. Wow. Test estimation, 95% accurate. Test efficiency improved by 25%. I mean, this is real benefits. And these are the things you actually get from doing TMMi, according to them. And finally, regression test cycle from 4 hours to 30 minutes. I would say many benefits. Another one which I was interested in, and this is on this slide, is where is it being used? So which test levels, which test types is TMMi being used? And remember, we have did a survey which led to an 85% confidence level. So we can actually say now something like, who is using TMMi? Not just finance or IT companies or healthcare. No, which test level is the most interesting? On test levels, we're seeing it mostly being used, I would say, in this context. So system testing, system integration testing, UAT testing. However, it's certainly not the case that TMMi is not used for unit and component testing or component integration testing. 40% also uses TMMi to improve the unit and component testing. More than 50% also uses TMMi for component integration testing. So this is where it's being used. It helps to understand if you say, I have a problem in UAT testing, is TMMi the right tool? Well, maybe it is. We also looked at test types. I'm not going to explain the difference between test levels and test types. That's for another course, I would say. But again, interesting to at least understand where it's being used. And you can learn from others. We're sharing experiences here. It's most often used, and this is of course not as more as expected, you might say, for functional testing, for regression testing. So there must be a link from TMMi to test automation, because regression testing, of course, is candidate number one for automation. It's often used for performance testing. It also means that many companies are probably doing performance testing. Otherwise, you won't add up at 83%. And to me, I still think, although they're much lower, it's quite interesting that half of the TMMi users is using it for usability, almost half for reliability, and quite a substantial number for security. So we're seeing here, we're learning, and as I said, there's more to learn, but these are things we're learning from. Where is it being used? How is it being used? What are the benefits being achieved? Things like that. And the last one from our survey is, what were the challenges? And now you've been doing TMMi for a number of years. What advice would you give to others? And challenges are things which are, I think, pretty as expected. When you start doing TMMi, inconsistent processes across teams. And if every team is doing things differently, it's going to be pretty hard to grow as an organization. One of the challenges to get them aligned. We're also seeing that it's not so easy to do test process improvement. It's not so easy to use TMMi. I mean, if it was easy, we would all be doing it. I'm not going to say here, take TMMi and do 3 days of a course and you're done. No, it requires skills, experience. Maybe you need to hire an external consultant, a certified test process improver. Of course, the cultural organization, is it ready for process improvement? Whatever. Maturity of the development organization. As testers, we, to some extent, depend on the maturity of development. If there are no requirements, it's pretty hard to test against the requirements, against the user stories. If configuration management is not well organized, that's going to be pretty hard. If project planning or the whole way of doing a Scrum is very immature, then you can't get very mature in testing either. So we are dependent. Change management, resistance to change, too few resources. There wasn't a slide here on that, but in the survey we also asked what percentage is required to spend on test process improvement. Did you spend on test process improvement, and how successful were you in that sense? And we're learning by heart, I think around 5% of test effort is spent on improvements for most organizations. So if you think you can do it without giving them real resources, you won't fail. Advice is more positive, more to look at. Involve testers when defining processes. So don't have a separate department doing it, or a QA department or whatever. It's something of the testers. They know best. Make it lean, make it agile, make it practical. Another one interesting, I think, is ensure you interpret the model. So don't use the model as is, but think, what does the model mean? What does this goal represent? And how would we use that best in our organization? Don't use TMMi as a tick list, as a checklist. Use it as a body of knowledge if you want. Process champions. Provide templates. Share best practices. Yes, processes are nice, but typically providing a good template and sharing best practices. I know some people don't like the term best practice. Not a debate, but it helps to say, here's an example. Here's another example. You learn from that. Define long-term goals and short-term goals. Of course, you want to achieve something. You want to be better. You want to get to level 3. You want product quality, but that may take 2 years. And what is new or what is different in 3 years, 3 months, sorry. So it helps to have short-term goals that you can achieve to keep momentum. And a longer-term goal based on your policy. I also like the last one here. Change takes time. So please have realistic expectations. Also, TMMi is not easy. If it was easy, we'd all be there at level 5. These are some of the, I think, highlights, or at least some of the parts of the report of the TMMi survey. The report, by the way, is not available yet. It's in publication. That means it's being designed. I'm hoping, there's no guarantee, that by the end of this month, this report will be out to the public. I'll come back to how to get it at the end of my presentation. As I said already, the last part of my presentation is about how to get involved. And I will discuss 3 levels of being involved. And the most obvious one, because all of you are professionals, is how to get involved as a professional. There is, if you want, a career path in TMMi. And we see 2 types of career paths. There are those who say, I want to be a person that is able to do assessments against the TMMi in the market for other companies. And sometimes in bigger companies, the assessors work in the company themselves. Others say, hey, I'm not so much an assessor, I want to guide people, I want to help people. I'm more a consultant. So for both, there are, although they're mixed, career paths. The career path starts with a very basic level, much like ISTQB Foundation, because if you don't understand TMMi, it's a basic, you can't start the whole process. So you can become a what we call a TMMi professional, pass an exam. And then you can decide, well, which one is best for me, consultancy or assessments? In consultancy, you can see some knowledge on assessment is needed. We require you to have much more than ISTQB Foundation. So you are also a testing expert. And if you're good enough, you can become what we call a certified test process improver, and you're listed on the website. That means these people you can hire, you can get involved in touch with, they can help you to get started on a TMMi project. On the other hand, you have assessors who take an assessment course, who know about testing and know about TMMi. And there are lead assessors. The main difference, by the way, between a lead assessor and an assessor is that a lead assessor is allowed to do formal assessments. And only through a formal assessment, you can, as a company, become certified. So many who are assessors ultimately have the goal to also go and become a lead assessor. There's much more to tell about this one. There is even flyers if you want, but this is how to get involved with a person. And you can see here already the strong link to ISTQB. Although we're also saying, if you're not doing ISTQB with other certificates, fine as well. As long as you're able to show us that you have enough testing knowledge. Because it's not only TMMi knowledge. If you want to implement risk-based testing, you should understand risk-based testing. If you want to implement test techniques, you should understand test techniques. The second level to get involved in is as an organization. Ultimately, this is our goal as a foundation. We would like you as a company to say, I will adopt it. and I want to become a level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5 company, or I just want to use it to achieve product quality benefits, test efficiency benefits. That's our main goal. So our main goal is to get companies doing TMMi. However, we also have companies providing training to the market, so-called recognized training providers who run TMMi professional courses. Nowadays, very much through Zoom, of course. Or as a company, you could say, hey, I'm seeing a business in becoming an assessment service provider. So these companies run assessments throughout the world sometimes. Can be done remotely. So as an organization, you can become a supplier through training, through assessments, or our main goal in the end is become a user of the model and try to achieve the benefits as stated before. And finally, the last level, if you want, of involvement is we started with the TMMi Foundation in 2005 from the UK. And although some think differently, I don't think you can conquer the world from England, from the UK. So you need local representations in countries to market TMMi, to ensure as a training provider, to ensure that assessments are being available, to be a sort of point of contact locally, to ensure the model is translated, to ensure the exam is translated. So a number of years ago, we started with, we call them local chapters. And throughout the world, we have a number of local chapters. Some are just in one country. Some represent a region. You can see here, there's quite a few from Europe, some from Asia. There's one from South Africa. There are some in Americas. And I think the local chapters, to be honest, means they are the main growth, if you want, inspirator. This makes a huge difference. You can see a number of flags here. I don't know all the flags, but I think France, UK, Finland, Italy, Malaysia, I think, South Africa, China, and you can see the other ones. There are some missing. Missing meaning there are some who are in the momentum and maybe will become a local chapter shortly. I think we are talking with Germany, with Australia, with the Philippines, and some more. So hopefully this will grow. This is, of course, a third way to become involved as a country or as you might say a region. Okay, so 3 levels of involvement: as a professional, career path, as a company, supplier, user, or as a region or country. To close, I've run many courses on TMMi, and at the end, sometimes I ask, so why is TMMi interesting for you? Why would you buy into TMMi? And so this is actually the result of a training course I gave based on what people said. And maybe it's good to share that. The first one I think is interesting. It's objective driven. TMMi is not a checklist. It's not a tick list. Yes, there are goals, but the objective defined in your test policy defines how you will implement the goals. This is how you become successful. If you apply the TMMi in a model-driven way, you'll probably not do the right things. It also comes back to, I think we saw earlier when we saw about advice. Tune the TMMi to your needs. Do what is relevant. Many also like the fact that it's strongly ISTQB related. It speaks the same language. We're using management practices. We're actually seeing that I think around 80% of our users are also applying to ISTQB as their test certification scheme. People also claim it's well founded. I work together with universities. There's research. It's not a quick and dirty. Don't want to be negative here, but it's not a very consultancy based. Let's develop something in 3 months. No, it took years to develop. Working together with universities, looking at surveys, looking at research. It means something. It helps to get clear priorities. If you are a level 2 company, you would get the priority level 3, which gives you focus. It's not like, oh, this is all to choose from. No, these are the things which are more interesting. You can start, I talked about assessments a bit, and of course assessments are needed if you want to become further, but the first step is very well doable, self-assessments. You can very quickly find out where you are on the TMMi maturity ladder. It's freely available. We are a non-profit organization. We're not trying to make any money. We're just trying to survive and provide something to the market. That's our main goal. You can use it with Agile, as we can see already with DevOps. An open community, you can get involved. There's a user groups and things like that. And also the fact that it's not a static thing. There are new things happening all the time. There's ongoing development. There will be a new version of the model coming out. We are looking at many things are happening all the time. Some final slides. If you want more, there is as I said already, website, www.tmmi.org. You can find most of the things are related to the model, TMMi Professional, how to become assessor, how to become assessor. There are books available in English, in Dutch, in Chinese, and very soon also in Spanish, by the way. So if you want that, let me know and I'll help you. And finally, and this is very important, we will very soon have a worldwide user survey report out, hopefully by the end of the year. If you follow me on Twitter or get involved on LinkedIn or follow the TMMi Foundation, you will probably very soon find a tweet or a LinkedIn post say, the survey report is now available, please download it from our website. Thank you very much. And if there are any questions, looking forward to them. Thank you.
Hi, Erik. Well, thank you so much. Absolutely packed with information. I can't wait to see the final version of the user survey. I mean, you know, when you look at the satisfaction levels, that's 90% satisfied, very satisfied, or extremely satisfied, with very tangible benefits across sectors. That outcome is really a wow, as you said. When you saw these results, were you kind of, yeah, that's what I was expecting, or were you somewhat surprised at just how much benefit people were actually getting out of this?
To be very honest, I should say now, no, I was surprised. I expected that people were satisfied to some extent, but 90%, as you said, is saying we are at least satisfied or higher, is more than expected. Yes, I expected benefits for the quality terminology, but 88% is way more than I expected. I would say 60-70% would have been fabulous. So I was overwhelmed with the results that we got back from our user community saying the things they are achieving. And also, I think if you remember back the slide I showed you, it's very the concept is very tangible. It's not just saying, because many surveys they say, "Oh, did you achieve something?" Yes, I achieved, but they're claiming this is how much we achieved. So much GDP, so much efficiency, so less tooling, less cost here. So it's very concrete, if you want. Which it's very rewarding in that way. Yes.
You mentioned that people can do self-assessment. What's the difference between a formal and an informal assessment in TMMi terms?
You might even say there are 3 levels. There is a self-assessment, and the term always says it. If you do a TMMi professional course, I think you should understand TMMi enough to go back to your company and say, oh, let's have a look where we are. It's very, if you want, informal, but it gives you, I mean, first step is easy, I would say. There are enough things to choose from, enough fruits, low-hanging fruits. The main difference between informal assessment and formal assessment in TMMi terminology is that with a formal assessment, it's run by an accredited lead assessor, and he always uses at least 2 type of evidence for every statement he makes. And evidence could be looking at documentation, or doing interviews, and only through a formal assessment you can become certified. So let's say, Debbie, that you are a lead assessor, and you would go to the Bank of England, one of the companies that has been assessed recently, and you would do the assessment, looking at documentation, interview people, you would write a report, submit the report to the TMMi Foundation. We will check whether you did a good job, and if you did a good job, we would certify the Bank of England in that sense. With the informal assessment, which are done by assessors or by lead assessors, the objective is just to see where are you, what are the improvements are possible, but the outcome cannot be. Based on that, I can be assessed. So it's a little more lightweight, you might say. It's more or less expensive also.
Just on that, I will just give a quick shout out to Experimentus. I think we've got a couple of their chaps in the Congress Hall, which for anyone who hasn't visited, I have to say it's really good fun and it's a really good way of meeting people. So do pop in and see Experimentus and chat to the guys there if you'd like to know a little bit more. We're running out of time, Erik. I really enjoyed reading the slide about the challenges and the advice, and I thought that was really useful as an output of this survey also. If you had to give the kind of your number one catalyst for success for TMMi, what would that be?
I would say, I'm going to mention two, but they're related. I very much like the fact that people say it should be objective driven. So know why you are doing it. What problem are you trying to solve? Instead of saying, I have a model and let's follow the model. I think that's the number one. And along with that goes interpret the model, meaning that look what it says and translate it to your own needs and benefits and your own context, and then do the things accordingly. These are the two things I would like to give away, instead of using it too strictly, which is has accounted, I think, for some of the disappointments in the past.
That's wonderful. Erik, we've come to the end of our session. A huge thank you to you as always. It's a pleasure to spend time with you, and thank you for your presentation. Thank you to everybody who's joined us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the World Congress. Take good care. Bye-bye.